so that others who are not able to attend can participate and see the recording later. So I feel like I've met some of y'all before. I'm looking around. CJ, were you in another class with me?
No, this is my first education class, but we did. You admitted me to the master's program.
Okay, I'm like, why do I know this face before? Sorry, CJ. Is there anyone else who's taken a class with me before? No? Okay. Here goes Akello. He has. Hi, Akello. He's connecting. Okay, so I thought that it would be a good time today to sort of check in with y'all and sort of talk about where we are in the course and just provide any some further guidance around upcoming assignments, and then give y'all an opportunity to ask any questions. I've taught this course several times during summer breaks or winter breaks, and the model has pretty much stayed the same, but I thought that this semester that I would try out some a little bit of different components in terms of technology, just to break up a little bit of sort of the status quo, because we are in online, teaching and learning overload right now. And so I thought I'd pull some new hats, some new tricks out of my hat as we probably go into more online learning in the fall. I'm no authority on it, but I don't know. What do y'all think?
Works for me. I have a 9-to-5 job, so online's better.
Yeah. Casey, what do you think? Are we in person, or are we going to be online?
College-wise, I think the university will be online. My district's pushing real hard for us to go back in person, but I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not feeling comfortable yet.
I wonder how that's all possible, I don't know. Well, whatever the case may be, I'm trying out a couple of different things. Not Zoom. I use Zoom all the time, but it really emerges towards the end of the semester. So we'll use the time today to sort of just talk about where we are. So I'm just looking to see everyone's names. Okay, I'll be able to put some faces with some names shortly. So let's jump right in. I was able to, I believe, grade all of the quizzes and all of the discussion board posts. I might have not gotten to all the discussion board posts for Is Everyone Really Equal? But I thought that we could talk about the quiz. So we're in chapters 3 and 4 of our course text, or one of the course texts, excuse me. And the reason I have y'all read those chapters is because it really lays a foundation for talking about culture and talking about socialization, and then thinking about prejudice and discrimination relative to the experiences of marginalized students. And when I say marginalized, I mean students who are from diverse backgrounds, whether that's racially, culturally, or linguistically, and who face different sets of challenges in the world. I mean, we're here in a summer of what I would call righteous uprising around police brutality, and sort of thinking about those cases in and of themselves, not to suggest that they necessarily involve folks who are emergent bilinguals or English language learners, but as cultural others, as racialized others in the United States, we have like very clear evidence, right, that folks' life experiences are different, right? Just in getting pulled over or going for a walk or going for a run or sleeping in your bed, right? Some of these very everyday examples. So I think that I start all of my diversity classes with these readings, and it actually, over the past few years, it has become scarier how more relevant these readings are for the events that are happening in the world, right? I want them to be like less important, right? Less significant, or less cases of sort of these kinds of social challenges, but is actually going in a different direction. So one of the reasons why we engage in this reading is for us to have a strong command of the language around these issues. And then as we begin to focus more specifically on the schooling experiences of folks whose native language is other than English, we have a clear understanding of what some of the practices are that can present significant challenges in their everyday classroom experiences, and how those came to be. So the quiz was on chapter, I don't want to mix this up. The quiz was on chapter 4, right? The opposite, chapter 3. And so I did grade those, and some of them are straightforward, and then some of them are some 2 short answer questions. So I thought I would talk through these, very briefly. The first question is about socialization. So it is, according to Sensoy and D'Angelo, socialization is best defined by which of the following statements? Letter A is norms, values, practices, patterns of communication, language, laws, customs, and meanings shared by a group of people. Our systematic training into the norms of our culture. C, the process of learning the means and practices that enable us to understand and apply cultural norms. D, all of the above. And E, B, and C only. So what did y'all think? Y'all remember that question?
I believe A is defining culture, and B and C are the correct answer.
Yes, exactly. What's that face, CJ?
And I got it right.
You got it right? Good. Okay, good. It's pretty straightforward. So the next question is that a short answer question? I think it is. The iceberg question. So people did really well on this iceberg question for the most part. I think that diagram really helps, right? So we're thinking about surface culture, and those are the things that we see in our everyday lives that can sort of be highly relevant and apparent social markers. And you all named some of those things, like food, even people's appearance. For example, like my hair is braided right now, right? That's a cultural marker. And then what's more significant, and Sensoy and D'Angelo are trying to get us to think about those cultural markers that are beyond the surface. And the reason they want us to think about what's beyond the surface is really they're challenging this idea of like multicultural education. And I just taught a course called multicultural education because that's the way the course is listed. And that's a part of the jargon in education, is like we're supporting a multicultural society, or this idea of the melting pot. Sensoy and D'Angelo is saying, well, when we think about this idea of multiculturalism, then we reduce different groups to things like a food festival, right? Like everybody bring in their dish, or we reduce a dish from their culture, or we reduce a group of people in a classroom to a celebration of a particular holiday, like Dios de los Muertos, right? But don't consider the larger significance of that particular event. This actually just recently happened with Juneteenth. Does everybody like see or was aware of all the events that happened around Juneteenth this year? I see some heads nodding. Now, let me just ask you this in real talk. Prior to this year, have you ever celebrated or known about Juneteenth? Yeah. Most
I
people.
like only saw it was like a holiday on like my calendar in Apple, but I never knew like what for.
Yeah, I mean, and most people don't. And you know what? A lot of Black folks don't necessarily know about Juneteenth, right? Because it's not a national holiday, and it is something that we sometimes can be just like kind of mixed into the 4th of July, actually, and not necessarily distinguished. It can be overlooked. Kello, I see you. Kello is a wonderful student of mine. He's also my undergraduate assistant or tutor. I don't know what his role is, but he's constantly causing me problems. Kello, what do you have to say with all that background noise?
Juneteenth is crazy. Yeah, I've known about Juneteenth for some time. I remember my dad would tell me about it because it wasn't something we discussed in our traditional learning environment. So like that was one of the things that I had to like figure out on my own or find my own resources to gain an understanding on like what that meant. Because for a while I didn't truthfully understand like, oh, what is Juneteenth and why is it a different day than the day the Emancipation Proclamation was signed? So that I feel like Juneteenth is just one of those things where it's like you just got to figure it out on your own because you can't rely on our schooling system to give that kind of information.
So yeah, thanks for that response, Kello. And you can find a place to actually sit down so that you can join us because all of us are sitting.
I'm trying my best. I really am.
Okay.
I'm really trying my best. I'm sorry, guys.
But it's interesting because like Juneteenth this year is an example. It was almost like somewhat of an underground kind of holiday, and then you see Target and Lyft and Victoria's Secret and sort of all of these corporate entities now making this into a surface cultural celebration. But there's some ideal answers to the question. And so I'll just read one that a student shared with me, or the student wrote in the assignment. And they said, surface culture is made up of easily identifiable beliefs, practices, and preferences that can be somewhat easily observed. Deep culture is made up of largely invisible social norms, beliefs, practices, and histories that influence what bubbles up to the surface. I think this is great. In terms of teaching, and acknowledgement of deep culture can help enable multicultural and multilingual learners to feel as though the submerged, right, of aspects of their persons and culture are being acknowledged as integral to their identity. This is a great answer. That they have a place in the classroom and are of value. Their inclusion can feel like an effort is being made to understand, appreciate the cultural characteristics that are often ignored. So in thinking about the teaching of emerging bilinguals, that again can be beyond just Latinx students, and we'll do a little bit of that work with the case study assignment. Sensoy and D'Angelo are encouraging us to begin to excavate the deep cultural backgrounds of the students that we will teach as a part of our teacher preparation, right? So there's also another article that is by an author named Marilyn Cochran Smith. I'll just drop it in the chat real quick. And she writes about multiculturalism is more than just a holiday. So if you're interested in reading a little bit further about this topic, that's a great resource. Any questions for me so far or any comments? So our next question on the quiz was, gender is defined as which of the following: the meaning behind biological, genetic, or phenotypical markers within a given culture, the biological, genetic, or phenotypical markers used to categorize people into male or female bodies. C, the roles, behaviors, and expectations assigned by society on biological, genetic, or phenotypical markers. These all sound very similar. D, all of the above, and E, A, and C only. A lot of people, there's a lot of interesting answers to this question. They were all over the place.
Well, I think you were trying to trick us with that one. I was confused.
It was in the text. It was right in the book.
Oh, I got it right.
Okay.
I read it. So I went back and I know I got it right. But I was just saying, I think you were trying to get us.
I wasn't trying to get you. So what's the answer, Smarty Pants?
I don't know. You gotta look at the quiz. I didn't hear the responses you gave. I didn't hear. I don't recall what answer I put.
Does anybody else have it? I think Olivia has it.
I may have zoned out a little bit, but I think, I think I answered, oh my gosh. Now I'm nervous.
It's okay.
See, football, you got us all confused now. We don't know.
Now I forget what I answered.
Does anybody else have it?
I think it was the last one, A and C.
It's A and C only, yeah. So it's the meaning behind biological, genetic, or phenotypical markers within a given culture, and the roles, behaviors, and expectations assigned by society based on biological, genetic, or phenotypical markers. So it's both. All right. We live in a free world, and human objectivity can easily be attained. In other words, an individual can reject social norms and live without social, psychological, or material consequences. True or false? Tim.
I say false.
Who is that? Okay, wait a minute. Somebody's hiding their face. Who is that?
Was it me?
Yeah, what's your first name? Because
It's Sharon.
Hi.
I don't know. I'm not sure why I'm unable to bring up my image, but I said false.
Why you say false?
Well, because they did describe how in certain cultures, like women don't shave. Like in Europe, they have, certain underarm hair. And in one of the scenarios, they describe how, yes, you do have these choices and these freedoms to practice, your own way of, lifestyle, your lifestyle choices. But it did describe how people were gagging and feeling nauseous. And, to me, that would identify the response or the way people are responding to this individual. And I can't possibly see that as not having some effect. I'm almost like, I almost see if I may add, like I'll see a woman with covering for Muslim, religion of Muslim. And I almost feel like a little like, timid, like that impacts me somehow,
Okay.
because, but I don't know, maybe I'm right and maybe I'm wrong. I just thought it would be false.
Tim, I saw you gesturing. Did you want to add to that?
I was just going to say it was false as well. I mean, I think as whether you go with the culture or with against it, there are consequences to going against the culture. Whether you're from Europe or not, it's there are consequences to culture, social consequences.
So I think that's good. Yeah. So I'm going to continue to use myself as an example today. So there's a double example because I have Angela Davis behind me with her afro. So let's keep playing with this hair thing because that seems to be a theme. So about 2 weeks ago was a celebration of the Crown Act. Does anybody know what the Crown Act is? Crown Act. It's part of legislation. Go ahead, Casey.
I think it has to do with you can't be discriminated against in hiring in regards to like your hairstyle, whether it maybe is representative of a certain culture or not. Like that can't be used as a means for not hiring or for firing.
So isn't it ridiculous though, right, that we have to have legislation to allow people to wear the hair that naturally grows out of their head, to protect people to have a hairstyle for the hair that grows out of your head, right? That legislation had to be made, and it was not that long ago. So again, going back to this question that, you can decide to reject cultural norms, and it doesn't even seem like it's something that's such a big, act of rebellion, but there are material consequences, which is employment, or social consequences, psychological consequences, which could be being ostracized, right, in your social group. So there have been cases of students from all walks of life, not just like Black Americans or African Americans, but also Sikh students, young people who wear their hair that's wrapped and has like a knot at the top. Boys keep their hair wrapped as well. And facing discrimination in a school context. There was another case of a little girl in the South, I can't tell you what state it was, that had her hair braided with red braid extensions, and they would refuse to take a school picture of her on school picture day. I see some people nodding their heads. You heard about that case? Yeah. So these are some of the examples of that you think are contrite and should not be so significant, but actually have consequences. So it should be the case that we live in a free world, that you can reject social norms or accept a set of social norms that you design or that your small group designs, and that is acceptable. But that is not the case. So that's a part of Senso and D'Angelo's critique in this chapter. All right. So the next question, Senso and D'Angelo clarify the distinctions between race and ethnicity. This question was a 50-50 split in terms of responses. So A, race is genetically assigned at birth, while ethnicity is learned over time. Race is a system of human categorization based on phenotypic characteristics. Ethnicity refers to common language, religious practices, and ancestry. Race is static, while ethnicity can change based on political decisions. And then D, all of the above. Jenna, what did you think?
I totally forget what I put for that one.
Okay, so race is genetically assigned. Race is a system of human categorizations. Ethnicity is common languages, religious practices, and ancestry. Or race is static. while ethnicity can change?
I think I put C.
Okay. What made you put C?
Just based on the reading,
Okay.
what I read about ethnicity.
Okay, Lauren, what did you pick?
I picked what was based on the reading. I forget what the answer choice was.
Okay. CJ, what did you pick? Do you remember? Race is genetically assigned, race is a system, race is static.
I think I said whatever it was that ethnicity is constructed and race is what you're born with.
Okay. So it's race is a social construct. Race is a system of human categorization based on phenotypic characteristics. So race is designated. So that the origins of that in the United States are connected to the one drop rule. And I don't know if y'all are familiar with that, but that was a major determinant post really within slavery and post-slavery, but more so by the time that folks have birth certificates and have to declare in writing what their racial background is. So the idea being, if you have any part of you that is phenotypically African American, right, then you're property. Right. So that designation, that one drop rule, one drop of blood, which is, again, sounds ridiculous to say this, but this was a deciding factor. In addition to the fact that one would have evidence if parents were also enslaved people. But race is completely a social construct. And your ethnic group is about your cultural background. But race has nothing to do with your genetic assignment. Race has been genetically assigned, and birth certificates are one document that does that. But it's actually completely invalid. All right, heavy stuff for a Tuesday evening, right? All right, so the last question was a little bit more complex. And so what I'm gonna do for that question, this was the question on, that asked, sorry, getting my papers together. This was the question that asked about the limitations of a neutral frame of reference, but we can actually talk about it. So first it asked about critical social justice literacy and neutral frames of references. And I guess those are the two things that we need to be able to define in order to answer the question. So what do we mean by neutral frame of reference? And what do we mean by critical social justice literacy? And some people did really good jobs answering this question.
I can start. I believe the neutral frame of reference is basically you're saying that everybody's created equal and there's no differences, and I treat everyone the same no matter their race, gender, status, and things like that. But in reality, that minimizes individuals' culture and where they come from and the experiences that they have compared to the experiences that you have. So if myself as a white male, compares, says, well, I struggled too. Well, my struggles are different than an African American or an English language learner and things of that nature. So I cannot compare my challenges to them, as hard as they may be. There's a certain, so when we try to keep everybody in the same pot, it does a disservice to to everybody's culture. So
that's good. Does anybody want to add to that? The critical social justice literacy, that was a whole concept.
Going off of what Tim said, the whole neutral frame of reference, I think one of the things that Sensoy and D'Angelo kind of make us see is, as much as we think we do, like nobody can really have a neutral frame of reference. Even if we say we do, we all come in with our own like socialization. So even if we think we're looking at things neutrally, we literally cannot. So that whole argument of, well, I view everyone the same, you can't, because of, like Tim said, your own personal background.
Yeah, that's a good point. Does anybody want to add to that? I'm real patient. So one point that I'll share is that, you know, thinking about and really like focusing on emergent bilingual students or English language learners, right? To sort of the kinds of comments that students experience. And this is things that these are ideas, or these are topics that have been shared to me in my research and with students that I've taught. You know, these kinds of comments like, well, you're in America, speak English now, right? Is a perspective that either participants that I've worked with, or again, youth that I've taught, have been told, right? And with this idea that, you know, that everybody's background, everybody's linguistic abilities are all the same and should be English, right? And should be proficient in English. And it's not necessary, and it's completely reducing and ignoring the fact that these young people are actually becoming bilingual, right? So that's the reason why I use the term emergent bilingual, rather than, and that's an additive rather than being monolingual. Another comment that I've experienced in my life, but I also know students that I even know on the Kutztown campus have experienced, unfortunately, is like comments like, well, I don't see color. Well, if you don't see color, then that means that I'm invisible, right? That means that a person who is of color, that makes them non-existent, right? That's denying one's identity. So Sensoy and D'Angelo write about sort of the denial of an identity, the denial of language is a form of oppression, right? Is oppressive in the lives of folks who speak languages other than English, whose cultural backgrounds are diverse in this country and contribute to the wealth of diversity in this country. So critical social justice as critical social theory, critical social justice literacy, as Sensoy and D'Angelo define, is coming from really early in the text. And I actually created a slide for you all that I put on D2L, and we can walk through that in a few minutes. But they say that the ultimate goal of social justice education is to enable us to understand structural inequalities in ways that prepare us to change them. So if we're ignoring differences, then there's no way that we can be able to examine structural inequalities, right? And as educators, to make change in the lives of the students that we teach. So we have to first recognize that there are these differences, right? And that there are these differences, and then be able to designate, okay, well, how might this group of students be experiencing unequal circumstances in the classroom? Like, are they being provided with the resources that they need? And particularly for emergent bilingual students, going back to the language survey that I asked y'all to do, there does need to be more preparation. Teachers do need additional preparation in order to adequately serve them. Because if you just have your English education degree, well, that's not enough, because you're trained to teach native English speakers, right? Even if your content area isn't English and you're teaching social studies or you're teaching science, you still need training, right? And that's a part of what this course includes, and also what the certification program includes, to specifically to support students whose language is other than English. And that could just be teaching vocabulary. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're teaching in, and I'm just picking Spanish, that's not the only linguistic variety that we have. It doesn't mean that you have to become bilingual, but it does mean that you have knowledge, for example, that in a classroom, and we'll learn about this some more, if you have students who are all speaking the same language, right? And again, I'm picking Spanish just because we live in an area, I live close to Allentown. The Allentown School District is about 70% Latinx students. So if I'm a science teacher in that school, then I need to know that in my science classroom, if I have 3 students and one is a newly arrived student to this country, and there's another student who's been here for a year, and I have another student who's lived here, these are high school students, I have another student who's lived there most of his life, and he's proficient in English and Spanish, I'm not going to separate those 3 students in the classroom and disperse them. It's actually best practice to have them work collaboratively together, because the student who has the least amount of proficiency can learn from the student with the next level of proficiency, and the student with the most proficiency can be teaching the other 2 students for mastery. Now, does that mean he's going to be the teacher of the classroom? No. But that having that little nest of support is an additive practice in my classroom. But sometimes we might assume, well, we want all the students to blend in, so we want to space them out in the room. And that actually goes against the research. So that's just one example of part of the training that that we need to have, and that is necessary to be effective in a multicultural context. So we do need to recognize difference, and we do need to be able to teach to support differences in our classrooms. I've talked so much.
Can I add something real
Yes.
quick? Just about the neutral frame of reference again.
Yes.
I think it was in chapter 3 too at the end, but you can really only have a neutral frame of reference when you're in the dominant group. And going back to your example of Americans saying speak English because you're an American, I mean, send an American to France or any other country, and they wouldn't want that said to them, speak French or whatever it is. So you can, you really only hear that statement, I don't see color, or whatever it is, from the dominant group, because they don't need to, they don't have a frame of reference to compare, well, nobody, they don't have inequalities basically, or less so. But
yeah, and I think that I think that you're raising a really important point. And at the same time, I mean, this is because a part of what makes this such a challenge, right, in terms of changing these perspectives, is because we continue to ignore these conversations and not have these conversations in schools. Mm-hmm. Like we don't talk about them. So when topics such as race, class, gender, all the topics that Censor and D'Angelo have hit us over the head with, right, in these first few chapters, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual identity, are become so taboo that we're not engaging, at any sort of, in any way, in our teacher education sometimes, in our classrooms. So then it just perpetuates a cycle, right, of not ever examining widely held beliefs. Sorry today. So what we do know is that from the research is that children from a very, very, very early age can, and this is early childhood, can look at their friends and say, oh, well, we look different, or oh, our hair texture is different, or oh, we speak different languages. And they notice these things, and it's not a problem whatsoever. At some point in their socialization, they're taught that it is a problem, right? And so those are some of the things that can be difficult to address, because sometimes it's not until we're in a class like this, right, and all of us are adults here, that we're beginning to engage in some of these conversations.
I have 2 little kids, and I'm trying to figure out, playgrounds, and because they say things, and it's difficult to, you don't want them to point out differences, but then it's also, well, we are different, so that's okay. It's a very, as a parent, it's odd, and because I was taught, no, don't say that, don't say they're different, everybody's equal. So it's a retraining. And just to add on to that, I mean, it's the idea that we're not perfect, so we make mistakes. So saying, oh, I'm not racist, but it's okay, we all have our biases and prejudices. It's understanding that we have them and trying to fix those. So yeah, anyway, it's
yeah, I think it's absolutely a work in progress. So one of the things that I try to do, now the sun is in my eyes, hold on. One of the things that I try to do is assume good intentions, right? So to assume that people are doing the best with what they have, and that everybody is on a pathway to learn and to gain some understanding, and particularly, this is what education is about. So I think that, that we're in again, an interesting moment in our society between, the uprisings that have taken place and between COVID, where we have a big opportunity to begin to think and reflect. We ain't got nothing but time right now. So there's so much reading that we can engage in. The Sensoy and D'Angelo book is a full text. I just photocopied the chapters to save us all some money for this semester. But I have many more texts that I can share with you all if you want to read more deeply on any of these topics. If we were on campus, you could just borrow them from my office. But I can share with you those titles, or just articles if you're interested in reading further. To the point that was made about language, there's a special on PBS. You can find it on YouTube. It's called Do You Speak American? And I usually show it in this class when I teach it for the 15 weeks or parts of it. It's super, super interesting. So there's a researcher that he starts in Maine, and he travels all the way down the coast. He hangs out with the fishermen on the Maine coast, and then he goes to New York. Then he goes into the southern United States, and then to Texas, and then up through California into Oakland. And he shows that all of the linguistic variation that exists across the United States, all of the different forms of English. So when the fishermen from Maine start talking at the beginning, and even some of the folks from Boston, but particularly the fishermen in Maine, whenever I show the video, nobody has any idea what they're saying, unless you have family that's from Maine, right? Because there's a specific cadence and vocabulary that folks use from the area. Casey's shaking her head. Have you seen the special, or do you have family from Maine?
No, I'm from Maine originally, and I don't have the Mainer accent, but people don't understand when I say, like my father still does. People don't understand when I mean that there's a Maine accent. They think it's a Boston accent, but it's totally different.
No, it's
Boston and Maine are not far from one another. Like the distance I lived from Boston was about 40 miles, so closer than we live to Philly right now. Very localized throughout Maine as well.
Yeah, it's very distinct. When he goes to, that's a great example. When he goes to this linguist, when he goes to the South, he's like in Louisiana, and there's a Creole spoken, and some of y'all talked about the languages that you speak in your discussion board posts, and you know, this is a form of English as well, and it's an American Creole that's a little bit of French and a little bit of English and a little bit of some indigenous languages and a little bit of some native African languages. And good luck, right, trying to make sense of it if you don't have an understanding, a little bit of understanding of French or a little bit of understanding of indigenous languages. I think those are the two strengths that could help you out. I speak French fluently, and some days I can understand, but most days probably not. So so if you get a chance, the video, the documentary is like 3 parts, but you can pick which part of the country that you want to look at, and it's pretty cool. It's old, but I think it makes a good argument for thinking about language. All right, so any questions or comments so far? All right, so I want to stick to our time and make sure we do everything that I said we're going to do. I'm just looking at the D2L page. If you want to pull it up for yourself, you can do that as well. So I said that we would talk, we checked in, we would talk about Is Everyone Equal? We talk about the case study assignment. So I'm actually going to just share my screen. It looks a little bit different from yours. So here I am in content or in announcements, excuse me. And so quiz number 2 was due. I graded all those. Discussion board, I feel like I graded most of them. I think I graded all of them actually. So this is week 2. So Paul Gorski is an awesome educational researcher. He's really thoughtful. I actually messaged him and let him know about this course and the work that you all are doing. So we'll see if we can get him to chime in, or sometimes some of these authors have a little bit of time on their hands. So, but he's interested in seeing what you all do with this assignment. So these case studies, I'll just click on them. There are 3 case studies here. There's an assigned nickname. I should download, it's not going to do this right. Assigned nickname. There's I'm Not Black. I took this one off, and then there's case study 11.4. And at the end of each case study are a set of questions, right? So those are the questions here. So this section, this module is on diversity. So what I'm asking you to do is to go to your assigned case study and think about what you've learned from Sensoi and D'Angelo relative to identity, culture, and socialization, right? Which is just what the chapters 3 and 4 were about. And then you're going to respond to the questions at the end of the case. In addition, you're going to think about, like, what decisions should the teacher have made that would be in the best interest of the student, and also representative of this idea of critical social justice literacy. So the questions are pretty straightforward, but I'm asking you to do a little bit more thinking work for this second part of the question. So I want to make sure that you all don't forget to answer that part of the question. and you're just writing a brief essay. I mean, 750 words is about a page and a half. I'm asking if you have come up with an original title. So instead of just saying case study number 1, right? Your title should reflect the argument that you're making. So this should be an essay format rather than like answering the questions 1, 2, 3. So an introduction, a body, and conclusion. For this assignment, most students do not actually cite the text. But if you do, or if you choose to, then that's totally fine. You should have a reference page no matter what. If you want to use outside sources, I love to see that. So you're more than welcome to do that. But the idea here is to be thoughtful in your writing and to show that you understand the text. And obviously to take a stance about the text. There's a case study inherently has multiple answers, right? There's not necessarily one right answer. So what I want to see is evidence that you grapple with the case study, with the problems presented there. So just to take a look, those are the assigned tables. So you should be able to find your name right there for the case study that you're assigned. You don't have to read all of them, just the one that you are turning in. And I've also added a rubric. Sometimes, you know, we're education students. I want to model best practices for teaching. I don't always use rubrics, but sometimes I do. So I've included a rubric here for you to review and to utilize as a guideline. So the categories are the depth of your analysis, demonstrating your understanding of the reading. So you are referencing Senso and D'Angelo, whether it's a specific citation or you're just paraphrasing ideas. Make sure your paper is organized and make sure you use writing clear. Make sure you've adhered to writing mechanics. I use Grammarly. I talked to Kello about this in our last class last semester. I use Grammarly for myself. It has been a game changer in terms of editing, as I often spend a lot of time, even though I'm a published author, spend a lot of time editing. And even the free account will help you pick up on strengthening your writing. So that is the sort of the next assignment that is due. Questions? Y'all were so quiet today. I should have done an icebreaker to make you all get into it. CJ, you got any questions? Straightforward? Okay. So Kello, do you have questions? You got it? Okay. So there's other stuff to come in a semester. Everything is available for you to view. Just to kind of put a bug in your ear. I don't want you y'all to stress out, and you shouldn't stress out, because I've really I tried to make this significant amount of work that we are reading and engaging in. I try to make it so that y'all are working in groups. I mean, you're doing your individual work and everyone will be graded individually. And trust me, I can see your participation and I can see your logins and I can see the work that you're doing. So know that your grade is your grade in the course. And so it's not just a group project kind of class. But when we get down into next week, you should begin to start to organize those small groups because your final project for the course is going to be a collaborative project. I'm doing something a little bit different this semester, so you'll be developing a Prezi, which is different from a PowerPoint. So I just want to kind of just to suggest that you like look ahead and begin to get in communication with your group members. All of that stuff begins next week. So I'll just share my screen one more time with you all. So there's a bunch of directions down here in week 3. You have your regular reading, and then there's a Prezi about your reading that you can view. That's really, really cool. These people did a good job of this in this Prezi on the subtractive reading by Angela Valenzuela. I'm gonna have you, I created a course Prezi, and that's where you're gonna be uploading your assignments. And you're gonna need to begin to get with your collaborative group. So that's next week. And then you'll have a quiz that's due on the 27th. So I just thought I'd share this to begin to sort of, if you haven't looked at it already, to make sure you look at the weeks ahead, see who your group members are. A lot of you have responded on discussion board already and introduced yourself to those group members. If you're having any problem getting in contact with group members, let me know. Because we should know now if there's any issue. And I think that's about it. Any other questions? We're gonna have to meet at 9 a.m. when y'all are awake. It's the end of the day, no 9 a.m. Does this seem like something useful? Do y'all want to have another conversation next week? Yeah. Okay. Jennifer, can you hear me? Oh, I see messages here. Jennifer says yes. Okay. All right. Yes. Okay. I see yeses. Okay. Well, talk to your people. Talk to your people that are in your groups and say, hey, come and join the session too. I want to see y'all, and for sure, but your other friends, have them join because they get some firsthand knowledge. And if you have questions in the meantime, you know that you can send me an email, and I'm happy to respond or happy to talk for office hours as well.
Just to double check, our groups
Yes.
that you're talking about, that's the group like that we responded to, like the group A, B, C that we responded to. So that will be our group throughout.
You know what? I think I made I make changes to that because I think I whittled it down. So let me double check because I think I make the group smaller over time. Okay, group A, B, and C, that was this week. Group A, B, and C, that stays the same. Yeah, no, this group stays the same, this class. Yeah, those groups stay the same. Yep. I didn't put anything up for the final project. I may, now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm looking at this, I may chop those groups in half because it's very hard to have a 6-person group. That's too many. So that is not best practice in teaching, is to have 6 people. You always want to have, really ideally, is 3 people in a group. 4, 5, forget about it, because 2 people are going to disappear in a 5-person group, right? So 3 is the best for everybody to stay accountable. And you do peer evaluations, so you are giving some feedback to me about your work, about yourself, and about your peers in the project. So thank you for calling my attention to that, Casey, because the groups are going to split in half at the end of the semester for the final project. So I'll make sure I fix that. All right. All right. Kello, are you good now? You're moving all around, bro. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, everything's cool. I'm good.
So Kello plays, does anybody here play sports? Nobody plays sports? So Kello plays on our basketball team. Kello, what's happening with basketball this year?
Well, as of now, we're playing this season. I think we start the same time, but we're not playing any out of conference games.
You're not
But
playing,
as of now,
you're not playing what now?
out of conference. So we only play teams that are in our conference.
What does that even mean, out of conference?
So usually we start the season off with so when you try to make the playoffs, you got to beat teams in your conference. So when you start the season, you play teams out of conference. So it's kind of like just like a warm up, just to kind of get playing. So like, hey, you might lose a game, but it's not going to really heavily impact you because it's not a conference game. But they got rid of all out of conference games, I guess, because they don't want too much intermingling between schools. But it don't really make a difference, really. So our season is like 10 games shorter.
It's shorter. Okay. Who all is parents here? Who all are parents on here? Okay, so 2 parents, 3 parents. So who all has, and Jennifer, yes. Who all has younger siblings or older siblings? Younger siblings. Yeah. So we all have to figure out where these kids are going to go in the fall. I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. These are strange times we're living in. It's a good space that we can try to comfort each other, because I think this is going to come down to probably the end of the course when we'll figure out if we're all at virtual lives for the next semester. All right, y'all. Well, it was good seeing your faces. Oh, their school is full-time learning. Jennifer says it's full-time. Full-time face-to-face, Jennifer? She's responding, yes. Wow. Okay, well, we will see. All right, so is this time good for you all? I could do 4 o'clock next week as well. Let me double check that. Is earlier, does that make a difference?
For me, sometimes it depends. I have the afternoon shift at work.
Oh, okay.
I usually work like 12 to 5:30, so sometimes it's a little iffy. I could just make it at 6 if I work that day, but it depends.
I actually have an appointment at 6 next week, so we can't do that. But maybe we can do Wednesday at 6. Does that work for people?
Yeah, that works for me.
That's good for me.
I'll make it work.
Jennifer. Okay, so y'all are here. So 6 p.m. on Wednesday, the 22nd. I will send you, I'll set up the Zoom and then I'll send that link to you all. But in the meantime, please contact me if you have questions. I'm here to support you. I'm trapped in the house just like you, so I love any interaction with human beings. So have a good week, all right?
Thanks. You too.
Take care. Bye.